So, I spent a lot of time in the last video complaining about Peacekeeper and how awful she is.
Are you fucking kidding me? Literal years, and this is the pity buff we get? For fuck's sake, she didn't even get the 5 damage increase on her Acvies because that devs said it was too much damage. For fuck's sake, Ubisoft, this is why Elden Ring is doing laps around your piss poor excuse of open worlds.
But didn't really provide any sort of solutions or ideas on how I think she should be tweaked or reworked. So I thought I would do just that and give my brilliant and objectively correct opinions on how I think this game should be balanced. Now, allow me to say, I'm not some sort of professional game developer and know how these things work. I just play games. Now, with that being said, this is Ubisoft we're talking about, so I don't really have to be a professional to do a better job than them. I mean, come on, these three games have the exact same story structure. I imagine a light novel author could come up with more unique ideas than the goons over at Gooby. For starters, I would just straight up remove Reflex Guard. There is no reason for this mechanic to exist anymore, and while we're at it, let's just remove it from every assassin in the game, except for Berserker, because that's the only thing keeping him from being overpowered with this stupid bullshit hyper armor lights. Sorry, I'm getting carried away. Next, I would remove her sword, but keep her dagger. Stay with me here. I would then give her a Mossberg 590 12-gauge pump-action shotgun and strap her dagger to the end of it like a bayonet. Don't worry, this is the 13th century. The Geneva Convention hasn't been invented yet. The shotgun would work similar to Pirate's Gun, where the attacks are bashes that do damage, but considering this is a shotgun and not a flintlock, you'd have to assume it would do more than a measly 8 damage, or whatever the hell Pirate's Gun does. I'm thinking it should do something like 60 damage, with this varying depending on how far you are from the target, like a real shotgun maybe, but only something like 25 at max distance, and obviously since this is a shotgun, it can hold multiple shells. I think it should be able to fire 5 times before having to reload, 4 maybe if this ends up being too powerful. Lastly, I would add an unblockable bayonet charge to her shotgun that works similar to Lawbringers and Griffin's charge attacks, and if landed, would impale her opponent and fire her shotgun, dealing increased damage. And since Pinkei is getting a completely new weapon, I think it's only fitting she gets new executions to go along with this. I'm thinking it would look something like that one kill animation from Saints Row 4 where you shove the weapon up their ass and send them flying. I'd find that interesting. Now, I am a reasonable man. It's understandable if Ubisoft can't implement this rework, and God knows they would never do anything this cool, so I came up with some more doable changes I think Booby could realistically add. This game is moving towards a bash meta, unfortunately, so I took the time to come up with 2 versions of my PK rework, one in this bash meta and one in a universe where Ubisoft hired devs based on their talent. I say 2 versions, but they're mostly the same, with just small tweaks to each meta. First things first, she should have her heavy attack speed increased. I tried to find stats to currently figure out what the actual speed is right now, but every time I searched up Peacekeeper numbers or Peacekeeper stats, I got a bunch of military shit, but just from playing her, her heavy attacks just feel so sluggish and shit, and it doesn't help that since her damage is also bad, it's not fast enough to compensate for the bad damage, so I think she should either have her attack speed increased or her heavy damage increased. Either one works for me, really. If we're going down the bash route, then I want to talk about her unblockables. I'd actually keep them as they are now, where you have to bleed to do your unblockables, and I know I was complaining about this last time, but let me explain. I'd make it so her bash punish dealt bleed, not a lot of bleed, about enough to only last about a second, maybe a second and a half, and if the PK is quick, they could throw an unblockable heavy, which if landed would allow her to bleed more and keep the momentum going. To me, this sounds like the ideal bash, since it would mostly only be used once at the beginning of fights to get your unblockables, and you wouldn't have to spam it like so many other bashes because the bleed it inflicts would do very little damage. Now, if we're talking about the more preferable rework where she doesn't have a bash, I have a few ideas that might make her more viable. I'd remove the requirement to... I would remove the requirement for her to bleed to unblockable, and instead make her side heavy finishers unblockable by default, and make her top heavy finisher undodgeable. Or you could actually reverse this and make her top finishers unblockable and her side finishers undodgeable. Either would work for me, as it gives her more pressure in ganks, which she literally has none of right now, as well as giving her more options in duels to not get dodge spammed by the dipshit Orochi. Also, quick tangent real quick, I want to talk about Orochi and his kit real quick. I don't find his kit overpowered by any means. I think his dodge recovery is kinda annoying, but not overpowered. What I do think about is bullshit about Orochi is bullshit. I'm not doing more takes, eat shit. What I do think is bullshit about him though is his stamina drain. He can kill whole people from start to finish without stopping and without draining his stamina bar completely. That is dumb. Whereas Peacekeeper throws 2 heavies in his zone and she's fucking keeling over, gasping for just a crumb of oxygen so she can clean the gunk out of the enemy's teeth with her toothpick damage. Orochi's stamina could use a bit of a nerf, and if you happen to disagree, leave a comment so I can promptly ignore it. I see a lot of people say her bleed soft feint is really good because it's damn near unreactable, and while it may be really fast, it also only comes in one direction. And newsflash, most PKs aren't going to let a heavy fly that isn't an unblockable. They'll either soft feint into a guard break or top light bleed. So all you have to do is aim top and keep your finger on your GB button, and the PK loses 10 times out of 10. Now, I can't avoid talking about her GB punish forever. If PK were to get any of these reworks, I think that damage should actually be nerfed. It's a 38 damage from neutral, and it's only tolerable now because everything else does next to no damage. But if I know Yubi, and I like to think I do, they'll probably nerf this first, then buff PK like 3 seasons later. I feel like the feats should at least be mentioned once in this video, even though I don't really think there's a whole lot to talk about. Her tier 1s are fine. You'll more than likely end up using Bounty Hunter because stealth is situational, and Conquer is only good if you're playing Deathmatch to get buffs faster, but Deathmatch sucks, so it gets thrown in the trash. Fiat, Lux, and Thick Skin in tier 2 are fine, but whoever decided that Executioner's Respite should be added to PK must be some sort of fucking Bond villain, leaning back in his chair cackling while petting his cat, knowing full well Peacekeeper's never going to get executions because her damage is comparable to FaZe Jev's MW2 flashbangs.
Oh my fucking god!
Pugno Mortis and Crossbow are good, albeit it's kinda insulting that Griffin got a crossbow feat as well, that both deals damage and heals, but whatever, I'm not mad, just disappointed. Sharpened Blade is really good and fucking amazing when paired with her tier 4 Fear itself. This completely turns Peacekeeper around and makes her an absolute monster. Any and every enemy around her is going to get fucking bodied, but to do this you have to use both her tier 3 and 4 at the same time to get this result. Meanwhile, Shigoki just gets a single feat that can achieve something similar with arguably less effort. Oh yeah, there's also Catapult and Last Laugh. I mainly use Last Laugh actually because there's this sick sense of satisfaction from being killed by some light spamming cunt only for him to fucking explode while he's in the middle of teabagging you. Reworking her feats is weirdly difficult. Ideally, Ubisoft would make Sharpened Blade and Fear itself one feat, but even I have to admit that'd probably be OP. I think either removing Catapult or Last Laugh and giving her Shinobi's Yama-Uba feat would be nice. She's not likely to hit you anyway, might as well reward her if she can accomplish such an incredible task. Maybe Tough as Nails since her health is piss poor, it might give her more survival, especially if Ubisoft doesn't remove Reflex Guard. Other than that, I don't think her feats need that much of a rework since you'll never be relying solely on your feats to win fights. I see these more as suggestions to ease the burden a bit. That's about it for my PK rework. I think what I've mainly learned from all this is that she just needs a way to apply pressure in ganks and team fights, and before I hear some idiot say, oh well, Aiden actually, she doesn't need a buff or rework cause she's fine in duels, and no, idiot. A hero who's good in duels and bad in 4s, or vice versa, is a bad hero, and calling her good in duels is generous. She's slightly above average in duels, and even then that might be giving her too much credit. As I said at the beginning, I'm not an expert on balance or game design, I just know what I do and don't like, and I really don't like the state of PK right now. And so, I ask you to only take these ideas into consideration and form your own opinion. You don't have to agree with all or of anything I said in this video, and I'd be interested in others' thoughts on the matter. Just know if you disagree with me, you're not invited to my sleepover. And just a quick word of warning to anybody who watches this and is interested in For Honor content, just know I don't plan to only do For Honor content. This game is already lacking consistent content releases, and if I had to make a video like this every time Ubisoft releases an emote they stole from a better piece of media, I'd fucking execute myself.